in the head. So apparently it got caught sometime and broke the line or something. The fish hook is still up, stuck in its head. Nobody knows what the creature is. Scituate Harbor, I stopped there and saw the people who were the first ones to see the Scituate Harbor monster. 1970, this critter washed up on the beach. I talked to the sheriff, who was the first one there on the scene. It washed up at 2 in the morning. It stunk terribly. You could smell it for 3 miles. So the sheriff was called. He went out there to see what the stink was, and it's this 50-foot-long creature laying on the beach. As soon as a rock radio station heard about it, they started announcing at 2 a.m., "Hey, there's a sea monster washed up on the beach in Scituate Harbor." And people came down for miles, and all the highways and streets were blocked for miles. People trying to get to see the sea monster at 3 a.m. Anyway, everybody brought hatchets and machetes, or most of them did, and started cutting off pieces and taking it home so they could have a piece of the sea monster. By the time they got some pictures of it, it was all chopped up. The health department came out and said, "We don't care what it is. It stinks. It's dangerous to contaminate the community," so they blew it back into the water with dynamite. But the Woods Hole oceanographic people, scientists, came down and cut the head off and took it back in a dump truck. The head filled a dump truck. They analyzed it, the protein, and said it's a basking shark. Again, they always call them a basking shark. That's their standard answer. I doubt that duels will be fought on the proper name for the monster, with the experts at Woods Hole stating it's a basking shark and Dr. John Hannon positively refusing to accept anything but a real sea serpent. Edward Rowe Snow wrote a lot about the creature since he lived there in that area. On the coast of California, in 1925, this animal washed up on the beach. This is from the article California's Nessie in Skin Diver magazine. You can see the guy behind has a rifle just in case it moves again. What you're seeing there is the head. There's the eyeball on top. Kind of a rounded dome-shaped head, like a basketball sort of shape, with a beak on it. The neck was 20 feet long. I got a call from an atheist, or a letter from an atheist one time. He said, "Hovind, you're so stupid. Don't you know that was a whale?" I wrote back and said, "Please show me any neck on a whale. Where's the neck on a whale, please?" But the people who examined it, like the president of the British Columbia Natural History Society, he said, "My examination of the monster was quite thorough. It had no teeth, the head is large, the neck 20 feet long. The body is weak, and the tail is only 3 feet in length from the end of the backbone. With a bill like it possesses, it must have lived on herbage, plants, and undoubtedly inhabited a swamp. I would call it a type of plesiosaurus. It had 2 short front flippers, 2 short feet or flippers, and probably swam with its head high above the water." Some fishermen had watched it get killed the day before by a bunch of seals. Now, for many years, this creature had been reported in the coast of California. The fishermen called it the Old Man of the Sea. You'd see it swimming around with its head up. Right off the coast of Monterey, let me back up a couple of slides here and show you. Right off the coast of California there, you go out a couple miles and it drops off into a trench. The water is incredibly deep. I think more than 10,000 feet. And that's where this creature was seen. And it washed up after these seals went out and killed it one day, a big war between a bunch of seals and this big creature. It washed up on the beach a day or 2 later. But in the 1930s and 40s, other creatures were seen by the Monterey sardine fleet. At that time, that was the sardine capital of the world. One crew with 12 men watched it. Here's their report. They said it stared at them with large, baleful eyes from a rounded head that topped a long, slender neck that stuck out of the water a distance of 8 or more feet. And there's another book about California's sea monsters, if you want to get it from CSE. There's just so much material, like, for instance, the White River Monster in Newport, Arkansas. I interviewed folks who saw it. The man who took that picture is Cloyce Warren. I talked to Cloyce on the phone. He said, "Look, I had a whole roll of pictures taken of that creature. I took them down to the newspaper office and said, 'Here, you've been laughing at us for saying there's something in this lake. Here's still in the roll. You develop it.' Well, some idiot at the newspaper office didn't realize this was color film, and he developed it with black and white developer and ruined the entire roll. So they called Cloyce and said, 'Oops, sorry.' Anyway, he said, 'This other picture I got's not nearly as good. But you can see the body at the far right, kind of a big body, and then a bunch of bumps down its back.' Cloyce and everybody else who saw it claims it's probably a basilosaurus or a zeuglodon or something similar to that, with bumps down its back, 2 front flippers. Most people would say an extinct dinosaur, but apparently not. It hasn't been seen since '72, when they had a big flood and the river filled in quite a bit. The river used to be 100 feet deep. Now it's only 50 feet deep at that point. But Arkansas Senate passed a resolution to protect the White River monster. Jupiter, Florida, something was seen. Here's the article about the guy who saw it. He told me he saw this creature surface as he was flying out 7 or 8 miles off the coast of Jupiter, Florida. John Messick wrote me that email about this creature. In Vermont, there's a lake between Vermont and New York called Lake Champlain. Many people claim they've seen the Lake Champlain monster. I talked to Sandy, who took this picture on the front of the book. I said, Sandy, do you think you saw a dinosaur? She said, oh no, I know I saw a dinosaur. She and her husband and 2 kids watched it for 10 minutes, and she describes that on the videotape number 3 again. Okay, 1998, 58 people saw it again, just a couple years ago. It is regularly reported. When I went there to Lake Champlain, I talked to folks that lived along the lake. I said, have you ever seen the Lake Champlain monster? Some said, no, it's just a joke. Some said, yeah, I've seen it, but I wouldn't tell anybody because you're going to get laughed at. I mean, if you go home and say, hey, I was out fishing and I saw a dinosaur, what are your friends going to think? Something went wrong, right? A little too much sunlight out there, right? One more story and we got to quit. In Pensacola, Florida, right here. This sketch was drawn by Edward Bryan McCleary, who was the only survivor when 5 kids went scuba diving out. You know where the sunken ship is out off the base there, Steve? You ever seen that old sunken ship sticking up? What's the name of that ship? The Massachusetts, I think? Anyway, they sank it, I think, as target practice after the war, purposely or something. But it was an old ship they're getting rid of. So these guys are going to go out scuba diving. That's a pretty good distance out to this ship. Okay? And Edward McCleary is the only survivor. Here's his report, word for word. He said, we were in an Air Force rescue raft. Now understand, one of the kids who did not come back, his dad was real high up in Air Force sea rescue. So he had gotten on one of these big Air Force rescue rafts, and these 5 kids, late teenagers, 16, 17, 18, 19, are going to go scuba diving. He said, we were bound for a sunken ship a few miles off the coast. Midway out, we were caught in a storm and dragged out to sea. When the storm cleared, we were in a dense fog, and we began to hear strange noises, rather like the splashing of a porpoise, also a sickening odor like that of dead fish. The noise got closer to the raft, and it was then we heard a loud hissing sound. Out in the fog, we saw what looked like a long pole, about 10 feet high, sticking straight up out of the water. On top was a bulb-like structure. I assume he means light bulb shape, round, with a beak on it, like the other creature we saw a minute ago. It bent in the middle and went under. It appeared several more times, getting closer to the raft. The silence was broken once again by something out of the fog. I can only describe it as a high-pitched whine. We panicked. All 5 of us put on our fins and went into the water. Now at this point, people asked him, why didn't you stay in the raft? He said, man, I don't know. It's all we could think of. You know, this thing's getting closer. You know, we're scuba divers, so we felt safer in the water. That probably a dumb mistake, but, you know, they did it. Keep together and try for the ship, I yelled. After we were in the water, we became split up in the fog. From behind, I could hear the screams of my comrades one by one. I got a closer look at the thing just before my last friend went under. The neck was about 12 feet long, brownish green and smooth looking. The head was like that of a sea turtle. There appeared to be what looked like a dorsal fin when it dove under for the last time. Also, as best I'm able to recall, the eyes were green with oval pupils. The guy's getting a pretty good look at it. He swam to the ship. He said, I finally made it to the ship, the top of which protruded from the water, and it still does today, by the way, and stayed there for most of the night. Early that morning, I swam to shore and was found by the rescue unit. That's the sketch he drew as the only survivor. I told this story in a meeting when I was speaking at Fort Walton Beach down the road here. A lady came to me afterwards. Her name is Val Bill. There's her address. She said, Mr. Hovind, my stepson, Larry Bill, was one of the kids who did not return. She said, my husband, his dad, was involved in Air Force rescue for the government. If the president would have gone down, he would have been one of the ones to go after him. The guy was real high up in rescue. He said they searched in vain. One drowned teenager was found. One body was found. The other 3 were never found. I called Edward Bryan McCleary. I chased him down. He's in Jacksonville, Florida. He refuses to talk about it. His wife told me, after this incident, when he was like 18 years old, he became an alcoholic and a drug addict. And he doesn't want to talk about it. He's afraid it'll, you know, stir up these memories or something. But that was right here in Pensacola, Florida. All right, we got a ton of more material you can read. Watch our video number 3 and get more on that. The point is, I think there are some dinosaurs still alive, including some pterodactyls. I've gathered a ton of material on pterodactyls still living. I get reports probably once a month. Somebody will call me from Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, or northern tip of Australia and say, hey, we've seen pterodactyls still alive. I spoke at Pensacola Junior College here a couple months ago. Next door, Jan Hadley, my neighbor, teaches English as a second language over there. I was speaking at the college over there. I mentioned pterodactyls have been seen in Papua New Guinea. This lady stood up. Let's see, her name was Irma Wati. She's a medical doctor, came over to America. She's studying English right now at PJC. She said, Mr. Hovind, I'm from Indonesia, and you're right, we have those creatures in my country. Pterodactyls still alive. I've had many missionaries tell me they've seen this, and maybe at the end of this tape, if there's time, we'll just go through and flash up the slides real slow. You can read it for yourself and chase down the information. I think it's a fascinating study, studying cryptozoology. My purpose, though, is to help destroy the evolution theory, which says dinosaurs lived millions of years ago, and I'm sorry, they just didn't. They're part of God's normal creation. They've lived with man all through history, and there might be a few small ones still alive today. And that's the point of all this.
For more information on the Ministry of Creation Science Evangelism, write us at Creation Science Evangelism, 29 Cummings Road, Pensacola, Florida, 32503, or call us at 850-479-3466. That's 850-479-DINO. You may also visit us on the web at www.drdino.com. That's www.drdino.com.